Those federal raids that were conducted on his homes back in March, obviously a lot of people wondering what was seized. Well, we are learning now that federal investigators are in possession of video footage that was taken inside of Combs's residence. We hear that these investigators have been contacting individuals that they have seen on this footage.
It looks like officially the federal government is set and getting ready to indict Diddy on some charges. Now, we don't know exactly what the charges are, but we do have some information into what the process is going to be and what they're going to do moving forward. We also have some information that says that there's some new video footage that the grand jury is going to be shown that is a little crazy. So we're going to read and check out this article from CNN. I want to play the video first so y'all can hear exactly what they're reporting and who all is going to be involved in this indictment.
So this is obviously the biggest escalation since those March raids on Diddy's homes in Los Angeles and Miami. We are now hearing that federal investigators are preparing to possibly bring witnesses in front of a federal grand jury in New York City. What we have heard is that possible witnesses have been notified that they could be called to testify. Now, sources do caution that investigators are still in the process of gathering information. In fact, they are still calling in new witnesses, and they have called in some witnesses multiple times. We also hear that the majority of the accusers who have filed these civil lawsuits against Sean Diddy Combs have been brought in for questioning, and again, some of them being called in numerous times. We hear that many are cooperating and even handing over evidence that they feel could be relevant into this federal probe. Now,
ooh, that is not good. Now, y'all know we mentioned before, when it comes to ClassE, you saw in her complaint when she was filing her lawsuit against Diddy that when she was going through some of the things she was going through when they were having freak offs, Diddy actually used her equipment, her phone, to record certain things. So we know ClassE, her lawyer, that entire side has access to information that could be used. And with them saying that there's some of these witnesses that are bringing evidence forward, I mean, I can only imagine what's going to come out from this. And we can all assume, I think it's fair to assume that when it comes to this indictment, especially, ClassE is going to be the star of the show. They're going to have a lot of information from her. They'll have the complaint. They'll have more video evidence if they need to. Man, we're just getting started here.
Them being called in numerous times. We hear that many are cooperating and even handing over evidence that they feel could be relevant into this federal probe. Now, a spokesperson for Homeland Security did not respond to our request for comment about the presence of a grand jury, but they did confirm that this investigation is presently ongoing.
Oof.
And Elizabeth, what are you learning about the evidence that investigators could be reviewing here?
So, as I mentioned, those federal raids that were conducted on his homes back in March, obviously a lot of people wondering what was seized. Well, we are learning now that federal investigators are in possession of video footage that was taken inside of Combs's residence. We hear that these investigators have been contacting individuals that they have seen on this footage. One person, in addition to the accusers who have filed these civil suits, is a male sex worker. That is what a source tells me. And
hey, yo. All right, so they've got everything, y'all. They got everything in this raid, and it's coming out. They've been contacting some of the people, she said, that are seen on these videos. It could be so many people. You even look at what we covered recently with the CEO of UMG. It's alleged that the CEO of UMG and Diddy spent several hours at his place behind closed doors, and the CEO didn't realize that Diddy was recording. What could be going on there? I mean, who all is going to be mentioned in this? We could already think of a few people. I mean, of course, you've got your Ushers, you've got your Meek Mills, you've got, as she mentioned, the male SEGs workers over there. This is just woo. And the grand jury, I'll tell you about the grand jury here in a second.
Times we hear that many are cooperating and even handing over evidence that they feel could be relevant into this federal probe. Now, a spokesperson for Homeland Security did not respond to our request for comment about the presence of a grand jury, but they did confirm that this investigation is presently ongoing.
And Elizabeth, what are you learning about the evidence that investigators could be reviewing here?
Anything and everything.
So, as I mentioned, those federal raids that were conducted on his homes back in March, obviously a lot of people wondering what was seized. Well, we are learning now that federal investigators are in possession of video footage that was taken inside of Combs's residence. We hear that these investigators have been contacting individuals that they have seen on this footage. One person, in addition to the accusers who have filed these civil suits, is a male sex worker. That is what a source tells me, and that they have been brought in for questioning through these federal investigators.
They got some
now,
freak-off
when
videos.
the raids first happened, we had a law enforcement source tell us at CNN that the investigation was largely based in sex trafficking, which is what HSI specializes in. Now we are hearing that that scope has been widened and that investigators are really looking into all of these claims put forth in these civil lawsuits. That would include not just sex trafficking, but also money laundering and illegal drugs. I have a source who tells me, quote, "This is much bigger than just these lawsuits."
Yeah, and I mean, ClassE was involved in a lot of that for several decades. Y'all know they already arrested his alleged drug mule, and he's out of jail. Y'all know what that means. They arrested him. They found drugs on him. They found lots of high grade drugs. I'll just leave it at that. And he's out of jail. So if the feds are looking into this case, you can guarantee they pulled up when they found out he was arrested, as Diddy was leaving once his houses were getting raided, and he's out of jail. So it's looking like Diddy does not have any fight left. All the evidence is going to come forward. And with these grand juries, y'all, I'm going to give you guys a little insight into how the grand juries work. Now, I haven't served on a federal grand jury, but I have served on a state grand jury here in Georgia and specifically here in Fulton County. I was on a grand jury for 3 months. And when you're on a grand jury, man, when I say I learned so much about the law in that 3 months is an understatement. The things you hear, the things that you see, some of these cases for things you didn't even know could happen. And when it comes to the grand jury, how it works is you're with a bunch of other jurors. Obviously, you're selected and they go through that whole process. How it worked for me is we were basically in the room with the district attorney. And the district attorney, they call up a case, and we went through hundreds of cases during that 3 months. And what they want you to do is you're going to have someone who's going to present the case to you. So they may have a police officer come in and tell you what he saw when this case was happening, what was going on during that experience. Then you might even have a witness call in and tell what they saw. Then you're going to have someone read the indictment. And when you're in the room with those people, once they present all the information, they read the indictment, then everybody's going to leave. It'll just be the jurors. And then you go through and you reach each individual charge. You go line by line. You say the charge for possession of a deadly weapon. All in favor. A bunch of people raise their name. And if the majority raise their hand, the majority of you raise your hand that you think it happened or it didn't happen. That's going to determine whether they are able to indict on that charge. Now, the interesting thing about being on a grand jury is when you're at this phase, you are not deciding if the person is guilty or not, which the funny thing to see when I was in grand jury was a lot of people were acting like they were in court. You're not actually in court. You're not actually trying the case. What you're deciding is, did this happen? Did it most likely happen, or did it most likely not happen? So you're not deciding if the person's guilty. You're not saying whether they did it or not. What you're deciding is based off of the evidence that's given to you. Did this most likely happen, or did it most likely not happen? And that's what you're raising your hand and deciding. So once you go through, you hear all the evidence and they read the different charges, you'll go through and you say, did this most likely happen based on the evidence? And you say, yes, it happened. Did this most likely happen? And you say, no, it probably didn't happen. Then what they'll do is they'll give that indictment over to the DA. They may take it and just go ahead and move forward. Sometimes they may have to adjust some things. And the whole process is very interesting. I'm telling y'all, man, it was serving on the grand jury. It was a mixed blessing because I definitely learned a lot about the law. It was very time consuming. As I mentioned, I was there for 3 months and I went 2 times a week to grand jury. But some of the things you see in these cases are absolutely crazy. But let's go ahead and get into this article from CNN. They say exclusive, a federal grand jury may soon hear from Diddy accusers. All right. And it's clear that CNN has some type of insider because they've been getting a ton of exclusive, whether it was this case that they know that they're actually going to bring this before a grand jury, or with the ClassE video, somebody's on the inside over at CNN. Anyway, federal investigators are preparing to bring accusers of music mogul Diddy before a federal grand jury. 2 sources familiar with the probe tell CNN, signaling the U.S. Justice Department is moving towards potentially seeking an indictment of Combs. Man, possible witnesses have been notified by investigators that they could be brought in to testify in front of a federal grand jury in New York City. According to one source, bringing individuals who have filed civil lawsuits against Combs before a grand jury would mark a significant escalation in the government's ongoing investigation involving the producer and Bad Boy Records founder. Yeah, ClassE is going to this grand jury is going to hear a lot from ClassE and see a lot, I'm sure too. Combs has been named in 8 civil lawsuits since November, 7 directly accusing him of assault. One of the 8 lawsuits filed by former girlfriend Cassie Ventura has been settled. Another lawsuit accused his son Christian Combs of assault, and Sean Combs is accused of aiding and abetting. A spokesperson for Homeland Security Investigations Agency, or HSI, which we just talked about, declined to comment on the existence of a grand jury, but noted the investigation remains ongoing. These potential witnesses have not yet been prepped for testimony, both sources told CNN, cautioning that HSI investigations are still in the process of gathering evidence and questioning potential sources of information in their federal probe into Combs. And y'all, when I say there was one case we had while I was on the grand jury, and it was one of the worst things I had seen. There was a guy who was being indicted for this cruelty against animals, I believe. And this guy had a pit bull, and he was seen on multiple occasions, kicking the dog around by his neighbors, pushing the dog down the stairs and different things. And one of his neighbors actually had a Ring doorbell. This guy was an idiot, one of the worst people I've ever seen in my life. And his neighbor had a Ring doorbell, and they caught a video of him abusing the dog. He had the dog on the leash, was dragging the dog up the stairs. Then he took the dog, and they were on the 2nd level of an apartment complex building. So he was on the stairs. He took the dog, slung the dog over the stairwell, and was holding it by the leash, and the dog was just hanging there. And we had to watch this on video as part of the indictment, just to get this person indicted. And I think part of the process is just to help the jurors to be able to see the full weight of the situation and what's going on. And I haven't seen something like that. And yeah, that was rough and tough to watch. And then we had other cases. I don't even want to mention some of the other cases that we had while I was in grand jury. Honestly, I don't even know if I can talk about that one. But yeah, it was pretty wild. Let's keep going with this article. Grand juries comprised of ordinary citizens are critical tools used by prosecutors providing both an investigation function in approving the subpoenaing of documents and witnesses, and a vote of whether to criminally charge suspects. Yep, that's basically what I just explained to you guys before. The use of a grand jury signals a particular case has moved beyond the preliminary stage, where investigators generally assess whether possible violations of the law are believed to have been committed. The feds have interviewed multiple Combs accusers. This is huge, man. Combs' home in Los Angeles and Miami were searched back in March. At that time, CNN reported that the rapper and entrepreneur was the target of a federal investigation carried out by the Department of Homeland Security team that handles human trafficking crimes. An ongoing investigation included a focus on trafficking, according to law enforcement sources. Now, additional sources told CNN that the majority of the plaintiffs who have filed civil suits against Combs have been interviewed by investigators. So they got Cassie in there, they got Lil Rod, they got Crystal, they've got April, who we talked about. Everybody has been interviewed. And I guess we'll have to look into the lawsuit against his son, because we didn't look at that one yet either. But anyway, Combs has vehemently denied claims from many of the civil suits, but has not responded to all of the allegations. In December of 2023, after 4 lawsuits had been filed against him, Combs posted a fierce denial on his social media, writing that, yeah, we've heard this a couple times, that sickening allegations have been made by accusers looking for a quick payday. Well, they gonna get it, and some. And they need to go ahead and hope that he settled these before he goes to jail, because I don't know, hopefully Javier LaFleur's in here, or maybe one of the other lawyers in the chat, and can let us know if he does get indicted and he gets put in jail, what happens to those other lawsuits that were filed against him. I would be interested to know. Let me be absolutely clear. I did not do any of those awful things being alleged.
Stop the cap.
Yeah, we all know that's not true. Let's see. So in addition to human trafficking, HSI also investigates narcotics, smuggling, and other organized criminal activity. Ooh, organized criminal activity.
What?
What's going on there? Because we haven't really talked about any organized crime. We talked about the drugs, we talked about the trafficking, but organized crime, I know they found a lot of guns at his house. They found a lot of other things that could fall under that umbrella, I guess you could say. Yeah, this is crazy. Federal investigators are now digging deeper, and some of the accusers have been questioned numerous times, a source said. A second source corroborates this current state of the investigation. All right. Evidence includes video from Combs' residences. All right. This is where it gets crazy, y'all. Federal agents are in possession of a video taken inside of Combs' recently searched residences, a source said. It's unclear whether the video was seized during the raids or whether investigators obtained the video from individuals they have been questioning. I have a feeling they're probably going to get more from individuals than they are from his actual house. Let's be honest. I mean, if he was smart, I'm sure those tapes or whatever information he had weren't just sitting at his home. They are contacting people that they found on the tapes, a source told CNN. At least one male sex worker who claims he has been victimized by Combs. So it sounds like he came forward with this video, the way they're phrasing it, has been questioned during the investigation. One source said, adding that this individual was seen in footage that is in possession of federal investigators. In some of the lawsuits against Combs, accusers have alleged that they were informed after the fact that they were recorded having sex without giving their consent to be filmed. Man, well, I don't think we'll ever really know who was filmed here and who they're talking about. There's just so many people who have been in contact and been in and out of Diddy's house and at his parties, at the after parties, as he called them. Combs has not responded to this specific accusation, but he dismissed all alleged wrongdoing in a blanket denial he posted in December, which we talked about. In some of the civil lawsuits, Combs is alleged of drugging multiple accusers. In the most recent lawsuit filed against Combs within the past week, former fashion student April Lampros and former model Crystal McKinney both accused Combs of drugging them. Yep, and if y'all missed that, go back and watch the other videos to where we covered this. All right, and then they go more into the history of what's going on here. It says Combs' team did not respond to specific allegations of drugging or secret recordings, but a spokesperson at the time said the complaint was made up and not credible. Well,
stop the cap.
Yeah, nobody believes you guys. Discrediting the accusations are as purely a money grab. In their motions to dismiss, which is still pending, attorneys for Combs called Dickerson Neal's allegations false, offensive, and salacious. Interesting. I didn't realize they had a motion to dismiss on that one. We might have to look into that more. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this, especially since they're being open about some of the videos that they're seeing. Y'all, I have a feeling that that video we saw of Cassie in the hotel isn't the last of the videos that are going to come out, especially now that Cassie is going to be going in front of a grand jury. I mean, they've got to continue to push this narrative, this victim narrative, which I believe is true. I mean, we saw it on video. They've got to continue to push the powerlessness that Cassie was under, because it's most likely apparent that she did some type of deal with the federal government or with Homeland Security to give up information so that she doesn't have to face any legal trouble in what's going on here. But yeah, I'm with y'all on this one. It's not looking great. Let me know in the comments what you think. How soon, this is what I want to know from y'all. How soon do you think Diddy's going to be brought in and possibly brought before a grand jury? Y'all got to let me know in the comments.